Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this is National Tesla the Gong. I have a very special guest with me. This is Michael Fink from Melbourne. Hi there, mate.
Hi, Nash. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you very much. The time is 10:30 at night and it's an ungodly hour. Thank you very much for doing this.
My pleasure.
Radio, mate. We're going to jump right in. Obviously, I contacted you because I saw that absolutely gorgeous map that you have done.
Thanks, Nash.
It is a labor of love, isn't it? It is an absolute labor of love.
True.
Very impressive, mate. Very impressive. If you juxtapose this map with the existing Tesla supercharger maps, you can see that it's a stark, contrast. And you've also highlighted that with those red dots.
Correct. The red dots.
These are the ones which are existing right now.
Yeah, although I must admit I made a mistake. Perth doesn't yet exist, but is coming in this year apparently.
That's right.
So
Perth is not
grey. So
yes,
apologies.
That should be grey, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, mate. I want you to talk me through the reasoning behind these green dots.
Sure. So the concept was to try and have distances that were reasonable between superchargers, and I picked 300 kilometres as being sort of the optimal distance, because it should be able to be used by Standard Range Plus as well as all the other Teslas. And I tried to focus on places where there are either intersections of highways or towns, or in some cases, a destination people would want to go to, like Kakadu, Yulara, Wave Rock, were all sort of tourist destinations I added in afterwards.
Okay.
I basically started with Highway 1, inspired by JP Tesla, who's just done the first wet season round trip of Australia. So I just started with that and picked obvious towns. So, for example, when you're crossing the Nullarbor, the obvious places would be Eucla and Ceduna, and so I just tried to find somewhere in between that seemed a reasonable spot to put one that would have the right spacing, and just worked my way around, and then basically filled in, the Sturt Highway and the Birdsville track and so forth till I had it finished, basically.
Although I live in Wollongong, I have a bit of a soft corner for the Northern Territory because I used to live in Darwin for some time. Let's go through the Northern Territory first, and then we'll work our way a few other parts.
Slight disclaimer, I haven't been to most of these places, but it's sort of a bit theoretical for me.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I love the way you've used Durack, and then you've used Fitzroy Crossing, and then Broome. So how did you come up with that belt?
So Broome, well, that's just following the highway basically, and Broome was an obvious spot to put one. Fitzroy Crossing and Halls Creek, these are standard places people might want to stop. And Wallara, I think, services Derby, if I've got that correct. So I tried to pick places that were clearly places where there was a population already in existence, where there might be some infrastructure, maybe some electricity, although I recognise that a lot of these would require, solar plus battery rather than grid connections.
You're absolutely right, mate. One of my good mates who lives in Darwin, who did the circumnavigation, Richard, he did it in his Model X. So he has gone through all these spots. So there are charging spots in Durack. There's a charging spot in Halls Creek, Fitzroy Crossing, Broome. They're all AC chargers. So if it's a familiar route, then people will be more than happy to sort of choose that, isn't it?
Yes, and I think Richard stopped at quite a few roadhouses at these places, so it would make sense to locate them near those sorts of places.
Absolutely, and it also helps the local community there, and that's a brilliant thing.
Yes, it's good for the traveller, good for the local community, good for Tesla. And it's important to point out this wouldn't be just applicable to the Tesla network. This would be also applicable to other EV networks. And I know that ChargeFox has just opened a charger in Keith and Launceston, so they're growing their network as well. So I think that's good news for all EV drivers.
I've had the opportunity to use ChargeFox chargers. So I did a trip from Wollongong all the way to Great Ocean Road. So I've used the chargers in more than one spot. I've used the charger in Banawata, then I used that in Melbourne itself. And then Torquay. So those were lovely spots.
I'm planning on using the Torquay charger next week on the trip to Adelaide, so that'll be quite useful, I think.
Even if we can't get all of these going, even if we skip a few, we can still make it. Do you think that's possible?
Yeah, I think they'll concentrate initially on Highway 1. So that's up through Norseman, Coolgardie, Barracoppin. So I think it would make sense to do that bit first. To be honest, I suspect they'll do Northern Queensland before that because there's a bigger population there.
True.
But definitely we need to try and close that loop to get that transcontinental highway. One of the inspirations for this work was also the recent opening of the Canadian V3 system, and I think there's a trip across that. They broke the record for the transcontinental drive.
72 hours.
Yeah, so it'd be great.
Those two guys were just amazing. The Mad Hungarian and Tesla Owners Club. They were awesome. I follow them quite diligently, and I look at all the posts. Oh, amazing.
Yeah, they were one of the first people I followed for Tesla.
That's great, man. That's great. Now, Tassie. I've been to Tassie, and the Launceston it's a great spot. And I've also seen that many of the cafes are very receptive to AC chargers, so there are lots of destination chargers. Yeah, I know that Hobart. I think the owners are all Tesla owners, and so they have chargers there too.
So reserved for God and reserved for God's mistress is how they label those two chargers.
That's exactly right. I've been there. I used that charger, and it's like, wow, that is impressive.
So we've just done a trip around Tassie a couple of weeks ago, just a holiday, and combined with a bit of business. And we just made sure we stayed at places with destination charges. And the distances are very doable. They're 150, 200 k's between those spots. So it's a very pleasant way to have a holiday and get free fuel. It's fantastic.
Yes, mate. Okay. Now, the more interesting thing than just this is these can, in the future, be converted into Tesla Semi mega chargers.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah.
Exactly. So that was my idea as well. So if you build it, they will come.
Yes.
If we have the initial wire framework of sorts, and then Tesla can pick and choose that, okay, this is a more popular spot than this.
Yes.
And this will make sense for destination chargers or people who are traveling. And this will make sense for Tesla semis.
I mean, it seems ambitious, and I guess it is. But I'm just trying to put it out there with what could be achieved. And I guess if you think about the early 20th century, people would have been thinking about this with petrol stations and saying, how can we put petrol stations in the desert? You're crazy. It's impossible. And yet it's been done, of course, because there's demand for it. So I think it is possible, but not easy, but possible.
That's true. And the economics of scale with the solar panels coming down in price and the battery is also coming down in price. Yeah. I think it is a definitely doable task.
Yeah, and Tesla, make all of those things, so it makes sense for them. They've got all that infrastructure.
Okay, this is a great segue. I'll pick your brains as well. So Tesla makes all of those.
Yes.
Would it make more sense if they made it here in our country?
It would be fantastic if they could. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the only place I know, I think it's called Tindo, that in South Australia make, or at least assemble panels. Plenty of empty car factories around Australia that.
Loads of them.
Is for purposes. Yeah. I was just going to say the Ford factory in Geelong, I think, is making blades for turbines these days. So there is some of that going on.
Okay. So that's interesting, isn't it? So it can be repurposed, these things.
It can.
And Tesla knows how to repurpose the Fremont factory.
That was a combined Toyota and GM factory. Yeah.
So they know how to repurpose these factories. We don't want to have cars built here, we don't have the market for that. But I think for solar and for battery, we do have a definite market.
Yeah, that's true.
Lithium is abundant.
There's plenty of
have the skill set.
Yep.
That'd be awesome, man. I'm really looking forward to a day that they say, okay, we give you the nod, let's go ahead and build it. Get a factory in Australia.
That would be awesome. They were not short of sunshine in Australia, so it makes a lot of sense.
Exactly. We have near perpetual sun here, and then we make all our electricity ourselves. My car's charged from the solar power. Yep. So we have panels, we have batteries. So any parting thoughts, mate?
So I think it's something to aspire to, something physical people can look at and say, oh, yep, that makes sense. You can argue about where you put them exactly, but the concept to have something that would be usable, that would accelerate the transition to EVs in Australia, not just for Teslas, but other companies could follow this as well.
Yeah,
because we're in desperate need of it.
Exactly. So we really hope and pray that the transition happens, and sooner than later, isn't it? Because we
definitely.
Really
we've just lived through the worst bushfires we've had, and that's a consequence of our reliance on coal and other fossil fuels, which is nuts.
Yeah. If we can reverse climate change, or at least stop it to some degree, that's a huge boon for the future generations.
Definitely, yeah, we owe it to our kids, don't we?
Absolutely, mate. Yep. Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you for spending your time.
Nice to speak with you.
Yeah, it's very kind of you to do this, mate. Thank you very much.
All the best.
Cheers.